Hello everyone. So now you would assume that I'm back home after my month abroad in Asia. Well, yes I am, but also no I'm not. You see, what happened was our landlord, well, yeah, landlord make it seem as if it's a person. It isn't. I'm talking about the company that owns the building in which we rent an apartment. And they decided it was time to renovate all the bathrooms in the building. Luckily, a few of the residents got a temporary apartment to live in while the renovations are underway. And in our case, because living with three small children in an apartment without running water for, I don't know, 5 to 8 weeks, maybe longer, is not really an option. So pretty much the day after I got back, it was time to start packing, and now we're in this temporary apartment for the next month or maybe two. Fortunately, it's just a 10 to 15 minute walk away from our home, so I mean it's a bit of a hassle, but you know the bathrooms really needed an upgrade, so I'm not complaining really. Anyway, so I'm going to talk a bit about two horror books that I like, or one horror writer of which I'm a huge fan. So I think this is the season to do it, right? Even though Halloween hasn't been a thing here in Scandinavia up until the last decade or so, I personally fully embrace it as a fan of the horror genre, and also because fall is by far my favorite time of year. So I'm taking a small break here from the Malasan content to talk about what probably is my favorite current horror writer, with the possible exception of Stephen King, of whom I'm also a massive fan. But even though this video isn't about Stephen King, let's start talking about Stephen King. So, even though I love horror movies, and there are plenty of horror movies that have scared me senseless over the years, the same is not really true for books in the horror genre. Even though I often like reading them, they really scare me. There are only two books that I can remember that really has scared me. And the first one, speaking of Stephen King, is Pet Sematary. I'm guessing I've read about 80% of Stephen King's work at this point, but nothing has hit me as Pet Sematary hit me. Granted, when I read it the first time, I was 11, so you know, it would be interesting to do another reread. But now that I have kids, that's not going to happen. It would wreck me emotionally. I always rolled my eyes at people getting overly sensitive of depictions of horrible stuff involving kids in fiction. But once I myself became a parent, I do not roll my eyes at that anymore. I mean, I rewatched Arrival a while back, one of my favorite sci-fi movies, and I could hardly hold it together. Anyway, so the other book then that really has scared me is the brilliant A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. First of all, his way of setting the mood and developing characters in all his writing is brilliant, and certainly on par with the Grandmaster King, with the difference that Tremblay knows how to write an ending consistently. And in A Head Full of Ghosts, we mainly follow a young girl. I think she's 10 years old or something like that. And it's through her perspective that we get to follow the story of her family through a very tumultuous time. And it all starts spiraling out of control as her father becomes convinced that her older sister is possessed. And this leads not only to the staging of an exorcism, but also a reality show centered around the alleged possession. Now this all takes place, I think 15 years before present day. Now presently we also get to follow this young child as a grown-up dealing with the trauma of her childhood. And in addition, in a really nice twist, we also get to read the posts of a blogger who are rewatching the series and analyzing not only the events in the episodes, but the influence the series had. So we get to view these events through this young girl as they happened. We get to revisit them as she remembers them 15 years further down the road, and we also get to see them analyzed by someone from a distance through this blogger. I read the book about 2 or 3 times at this point. Always find new aspects of it that I missed on previous reads. I will certainly reread it on multiple occasions. It's one of those books. It's a story about a family falling apart under financial strain. It's about toxic religiosity, about possession in general. What is possession? It's about mental health, certainly. As I read it, I would say that desperation is an underlying theme throughout. And in addition, there is a case of the unreliable narrator, and this is really interesting. What do we mean by an unreliable narrator? Most of this is told through the eyes of a child who then becomes unreliable, but not in the sense that she is keeping things from us, but because she can only interpret the situation with the tool set available to a child. Of course, I'm contractually obliged to insert at least one reference to Stephen Erickson here, and just as Stephen Erickson's writing, this is not about telling, this is showing and letting the readers come to their own conclusions. The most intriguing part, though, and this is true for both Head Full of Ghosts and the next book I'll talk about, is that you can read this book 2 ways. You either go in accepting the view that there is something supernatural going on, and this will lead to a pretty horrifying reading experience. However, if you go in with the mindset that everything has a natural explanation, and that then everything is going to become even worse. This is a tremendous horror story, and the ending, holy crap, the ending is a gut punch for the ages. So, another book by Tremblay I also want to mention is this one, The Cabin at the End of the World. It's almost as good as Head Full of Ghosts, but this is more of a psychological thriller, once again possibly with supernatural aspects. Once again, that's for the reader to decide. It's about a couple and their daughter, and they're renting a cabin in the middle of nowhere when a collection of strange individuals suddenly appear and take them hostage. And these strangers seem to belong to some sort of cult. However, their motive is actually benevolent. They want to save the world. However, in order to do so, someone needs to die soon. On one of my recent long-haul flights, I watched a recent movie adaptation of this book directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Remember in a recent video where I promised to get back to him? Well, here we are. Anyway, even though Shyamalan's movies tend to be hit or miss, to say the least, and unfortunately more misses than hits, but I'm always curious to see what he's up to. And when I heard the news that he was doing one of my favorite books, I really thought it could be a good match. I knew there was a chance it wouldn't be, but I mean, I thought it I thought it would be a good match. Unfortunately, the movie, the writing of the script, the direction of the movie, and some of the acting were really subpar, so I was quite disappointed by the movie. The best things about the movie were the casting and the acting of the antagonists. But the really big problem with the movie version, though, was that all the ambiguity went out the window at the end, and that ambiguity is kind of the best part of this overall really good book. Alright, so spooky season is here. Halloween is around the corner. Go kill a mule and then go read Paul Tremblay. See you soon.